Space Engineers 2 has just been released, and this video has been recorded on the release day, literally 5 minutes after it became available. That's important to note, as Space Engineers 2 is an early access game, and as the game was updated over the next few months and years, this video will no longer be representative of the current state of the game. Space Engineers 2 will be released in vertical slices, with each of those slices focusing on a different area of the game. The currently released slice focuses on creative mode and the new building tools, which we're going through in this video. Survival and planets will be coming in a few months. Water is planned to release in around a year's time, and there will also be some smaller quality of life updates in between, which will be discussed briefly throughout this video. If you want to learn more about the future of Space Engineers 2, you can check out these two videos here. The one on the left covers the complete roadmap for early access, and the video on the right covers behind the scenes development footage of Water and Planets. If you want a more complete experience with survival and multiplayer, play Space Engineers 1. The game recently received an update that included a bunch of planetary and endgame encounters, and we're expecting another update very soon, which overhauls space-based encounters. Additionally, it's been recently revealed that the next two updates will focus on survival, including environmental hazards, and then the next one on PvP, with more updates coming after that in the future. So, with that out of the way, let's take a look at everything included in the first vertical slice of Space Engineers 2. And, for those of you who are still on the fence about purchasing the game, I'm giving away 3 copies of the game later in the video, so stay tuned for that. The first thing you'll immediately notice when you load into the game is the massively improved graphics. I'm not sure how well it comes across on YouTube due to the compression, but in person it looks absolutely leagues better than Space Engineers 1, and around on par with modern games. Lighting is the main thing that's improved. Things like ray tracing and global illumination go a long way to improving the experience of the game, but do keep in mind that these advanced features do come at a hefty performance impact, but you are able to turn them off in the settings. Even without the ray tracing though, the game looks fantastic. Asteroid textures have received a massive upgrade, and all of the blocks have new models as well, and they are a stark improvement to Space Engineers 1. My personal favourite being the 2.5 meter gyroscope, which has this spinning bit in the middle. It's a well-known fact that I love blocks with dynamic elements on them like this, and there's plenty to choose from in Space Engineers 2. But I'm sure for a lot of you, graphical improvements mean nothing, so let's take a look at gameplay. For starters, the speed limit has been increased to 300 meters per second for ships and 310 meters per second for players, which is 3 times the limit in Space Engineers 1. Additionally, the player's jetpack by default is capped to 20 meters per second, which from my time testing is actually really useful for building. Flying around at 20 meters per second just so much better when you're placing down blocks. But you can still bypass that 20 meters per second speed limit. If you press shift, it activates your jetpack boost mode, which then allows you to fly up to the 310 meters per second speed limit. It's also worth noting that there's an update coming in around 2 months that is going to improve the jetpack further. But honestly, I really like what we've got so far. When I was rebuilding Apollo over here, it was actually really easy to build everything using the new jetpack controls. Speaking of new ships, let's talk about one of the main features in Space Engineers 2's first vertical slice, the 25cm unified grid system. In Space Engineers 1, large blocks and small blocks could not be placed together on the same grid. And now, in Space Engineers 2, you can place down a larger block, and then place down a 50cm block on that, and then you can go even smaller with a 25cm block for extra detail. It also goes even further than this. If you hold down control when you're placing a block, it activates precision mode, which allows you to move any block on a 25cm axis. Say you want to make a 25cm gap between these blocks here, you can just move it to the side, and then in that gap you can place down something small like a button, for example, in between. This also extends to gaps in functional blocks, with the best example being the medbay. You can place down a medbay like this, and then you can see there's this bit at the bottom, and you can just place whatever you want in the gap. It might not seem like much, but this will be a massive improvement to building more compact and detailed ships. Now, it's well known that I'm not very good at building in Space Engineers. You only have to look at Apollo over there to see that. But even so, what you can do with this new build system is absolutely amazing. It's hard to describe just how good this new building system is, so instead, I'll show you. Here's some things that people on my Discord have built, link in the description, and I've also seen people knock up some really beautiful detailed builds in a couple of minutes. Hopefully, looking at what people have been able to build with just a handful of blocks in Space Engineers 2 shows you how much better the new building system is. Currently, using the scroll wheel in your mouse scrolls you through what you have equipped on your hotbar, very similar to how games like Minecraft work, and pressing R cycles you between the different variants of blocks, so between slopes and eventually different sizes of blocks. The reason I mention this is because I've seen quite a few people talk about this and how clunky it is, but the developers have said that this is going to change in Vertical Slice 1.2, which is coming out in around 2 months, so our issues with this should be resolved soon. Another control change in Space Engineers 2 is how you rotate blocks. In Space Engineers 1, you'd need to use the numpad to rotate blocks, and let's be honest, it was always super clunky. You just have to mash all the buttons for a bit before you figured out which way around you were. In Space Engineers 2, you hold down Control for precision mode again, and then you use the same keys you use for movement to rotate the block. When I first saw this change, I'll admit I was a little bit skeptical of it. As we know, change is bad. But the first time I used it, it just straight away clicked immediately. It's just so much more intuitive to use WASD to rotate blocks. Undo and redo is a major feature in Space Engineers 2, and it's pretty much as simple as you'd expect. You place down some blocks, and then you press Ctrl Z to undo, and then you press Ctrl Y to redo. You can actually undo quite a large number of steps, but obviously it has its limitations. If you accidentally disconnect something from a ship or a base, you can't undo to restore that, so you still need to be careful. But for cleaning up minor mistakes, it's very useful. And whilst we're talking about undo and redo, we should probably talk about the paint gun. In Space Engineers 1, you needed to hold a block in your hand to paint the blocks that you were looking at. And because this block you were holding snapped the grids, it resulted in a bunch of issues where you wouldn't be able to paint blocks that are behind other blocks. For example, you have this light here in front of this block, and in Space Engineers 1, you'd end up painting this light instead of the block. But in Space Engineers 2, you can just point the paint gun at it, and you can easily paint the block behind. The reason I'm bringing up the paint gun here is currently you cannot undo or redo the paint gun. But, like your hotbar controls, the undo and redo of painting is due to come in Vertical Slice 1.2, which I said before is coming out in around 2 months. Copying and pasting has been massively improved in Space Engineers 2. For starters, using precision mode, you can create a partial copy. In Space Engineers 1, you'd have to completely detach a section of the ship here before you could copy it. But with partial copy in Space Engineers 2, I can just select a block, and then I can move out the selection from that block, and select the area of the ship I want to copy. And then from there, I can place the copy of it down. Now, partial copy is only temporary. If you wanted to keep reusing something over and over, you can create a blueprint like you can in Space Engineers 1. However, in Space Engineers 2, there is a new feature with blueprints, where you can drag it onto your hotbar, and then you can place it down like any other block. Additionally, like with blocks, you can drag out a whole row of these blueprints to quickly create things like corridors or hangar bays or whatever, and this also applies to partial copy as well. The developers have demoed this by showing you can create a bunch of prefab sections of ships, and then using those sections you can quickly build a full ship or station in seconds. This would be really useful for people like me. Like I've said, I'm terrible at building, but I'm sure I could whack together some prefab sections to build a beautiful ship. Destruction has also received a major overhaul, and this is another thing that's probably best demoed by me showing you it. And the best way to test out the destruction is using the new debug gun tool, which allows you to shoot out a beam that damages whatever block you're looking at. So if I start shooting the armour on the side of this ship here, you'll see like in Space Engineers 1, the armour slowly bends and deforms, but it actually gets more interesting once we start shooting the functional blocks. If I shoot this thruster here, you can see that a chunk of it has been removed from the block and is slowly floating away. In Space Engineers 1, nothing like this would happen. You just damage the block until eventually it just poofed out of existence. Now if you shoot blocks enough, they will eventually poof out of existence, but in the meantime, bits of it start to fracture off. One of the things that's quite cool about this, if I shoot this thruster, that was a bad example, that one actually broke. If I shoot this thruster here, you can see that this section of it has come off. However, the thruster is still functional. You can see that the flame is still on it, and if I were to fly the ship around, it would still give me thrust. It also applies to this thruster here. You can see that this large section of the bottom of it has come off, but the thruster itself still works. Remember I said earlier there's those blocks with dynamic elements that move? Well, the reactor is one of them, and if I damage the reactor a little bit, you can see that it has this large spinning thing inside of it. And as I said earlier, I love blocks with spinning things on them. Now, I'll be honest, I could spend absolutely hours, well, I have already spent hours on destruction in this game. It's just endlessly fun, just watching the blocks fracture into bits. It just looks so good. Just so unbelievably good. It's incredible. And it gets even better combined with the new block system. If I take out these blocks here, and then I start shooting through this wall here, and you can see as I damage this wall, sections of it come out. And it actually looks like sections of the metal are actually bending and flexing. It just looks incredibly good. I was quite worried how destruction would function with these little blocks, and I will admit in some places it looks a little bit odd. Like if I start shooting up here, you get these like little speckles out, and this doesn't look great. But inside here, this just looks absolutely amazing. You could make nothing like this in Space Engineers 1. These are the main features of Space Engineers 2, but there's a load more features and improvements I didn't mention for you to find in-game, and additionally there's a number of tweaks and improvements coming to the game in the near future as well. You can get a rough idea of them from Marek Gross's weekly blog, where he goes over what the developers are currently working on in Space Engineers 2, and also you can check out the game's patch notes, which I'll link in the description, which go through a bunch of things they plan to change as well. However, in short, Vertical Slice 1.1 will be released soon, and it will include the ability to save and share blueprints to the Steam Workshop. Vertical Slice 1.2 will be released in around 2 months and will include a bunch of improvements, such as the ones that are on screen at the moment and the ones that I've mentioned throughout the video. And then Vertical Slice 1.5 will include modding support and the new VRage 3 editor, which is a new tool for creating mods, which is apparently the same tools that the developers use to make the game. So it sounds like modding will be getting a huge improvement. After that, Planets and Survival are planned to release at some point this year, and there's a whole bunch of stuff after that, like water, multiplayer, etc. Check out these 2 videos here if you want to learn more. And if you want to keep up to date with the future of Space Engineers 2, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Anyway, am I forgetting something? Oh yes, the giveaway! If you'd like to win a copy of Space Engineers 2, write "Dude, you forgot the giveaway" in the comments below, as that would be really funny and confuse the people in the comments. And make sure you write it exactly how it's written on screen, with the comma and everything. And that's it. Bye! If you'd like to support the channel like these people have, you can do so by pressing the join button below the video.